This is Linda Cook.
And I'm Sharon Wren.
And this is our Quad Cities Crime Watch. We take a look back at the last week or so of crime in the Quad City area so that you know what's going on, and maybe we'll keep you safer and certainly more informed.
Oh, by the way, just so everyone knows, neither one of us have any legal training, so we cannot give you any legal advice.
Right. Sharon, you have some really interesting stories today. What are you going to start with?
Oh, this is a case that came up the end of last week that's a bit disturbing for parents in the area. The Kona Ice truck is a staple at festivals, sporting events, and other events in the Quad Cities, and has been for years. Well, the Davenport Police Department received a cyber tip from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children on April 26th about an IP address that was traced back to an address on Northwest Boulevard, specifically to Kona Ice.
Oh, dear.
Police spoke with Paul Fuller, age 54, the owner, and after he was read his Miranda rights, he told police he owns the email address, IP address, phone number, and social media account identified in the tip. Officers searched one of his accounts and found pornographic images and a pornographic video of girls. He was arrested this month and charged with 5 counts of felony purchasing, possessing depiction of a minor in a sex act first offense. He has a preliminary hearing on December 27th, and people are commenting on the story online that they're pretty upset because they've given him so much business at events over the years.
And I think people are maybe even more upset that they've given him their trust around their children.
Exactly.
Now, to be clear here, this charge doesn't mean he's the one that produced this.
No.
He received it.
Allegedly.
In other words, he is suspected of looking at these images,
right.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But like you said, it's just very frightening to parents and alarming because this truck has been at so many events with children. I have sent my kids to the truck with money to buy things.
Right, and he's kind of well known in the Quad Cities.
Yeah.
So, but everybody must be presumed to be innocent before proven guilty. So we will follow this case, right?
Definitely.
Okay.
And you have some cases, Linda.
I do. Now, this is a theft. This is a what I would call a smaller crime, but it's interesting. A 51-year-old man named Jerry Gross was in custody last weekend after police say that he and 2 other people stole 7 propane tanks from a Dollar General store in Davenport. Now, Mr. Gross faces a felony charge of third-degree burglary and an aggravated misdemeanor charge of third-degree theft, according to court records. Shortly after 8 a.m. November 27th, the Davenport police officer went to the Dollar General store at 2350 Rockingham Road when a theft was reported. And the officer met with the manager, and the manager gave him surveillance video of the business. So according to affidavits, the footage shows that about 4:25 a.m. that day, a man and 2 other people acted in concert when they arrived at the store, which was closed for business, and they used bolt cutters to cut the chain and padlock off the propane tank storage cage just outside the store. They took 7 propane tanks, and they were identified by police during later calls for service because they were wearing the same clothing worn during the burglary and theft from Dollar General. Now, 5 propane tanks were recovered from Mr. Gross's possession during a later call for service involving a theft and trespass. The value of the 7 propane tanks is $449.46. The value to cost, I should say, to replace the damaged lock chain, $20. A criminal history inquiry discloses that Gross has at least 2 prior theft convictions out of Scott County. So I have actually covered those. You can go to ourquadcities.com and see those stories. Mr. Gross is scheduled for a preliminary hearing on December 27th in Scott County Court.
Why, that's the same day as Mr. Kona Ice owner having a preliminary hearing in Scott County Court. It's going to be a busy day.
It's a busy day. Mm-hmm. What else do you have, Sharon?
Well, speaking of being busy, we've got an update on a string of violent crimes in the Quad Cities that dates back to 2006.
Oh my.
Almost 20 years.
Oh my.
9 men have been sentenced to federal prison after they formed what authorities call a criminal enterprise to distribute controlled substances, obtain money, and shoot at rival gang members. So criminal enterprise is like the fancy way of saying gangs.
Gang, correct. Okay. And in fact, and you can read this, we won't list them, but I read this with great interest and recognized the names of some of the gangs involved.
Right. This criminal enterprise has been connected to 7 homicides, including the 2006 shooting death of Vincelina Howard in Davenport.
I remember that so well.
And they were also part of a shooting near the Quad City Times' parking lot in 2020. All right, so here we go. These defendants were sentenced on December 18th. Don White Jr., 39, was sentenced to 40 years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and 2 charges of felon with possession of a firearm. Raheem Houston was sentenced to 30 years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and felon in possession of a firearm. And I apologize if I mispronounce this. DeGuise Hall was sentenced to 33 years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and for possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance. Michael Cross, 32, was sentenced to 18 years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy. LaShawn Hensley, 32, was sentenced to 12 years of prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and all of these gentlemen have a 3-year term of supervised release after their terms.
It's a lot of time to be served. Now, as I understand it, there are still people involved in this that are awaiting trial, and a couple who have pleaded guilty and are waiting for the process to continue. Is that right?
Well, that was on the 18th. These defendants were sentenced the next day, on the 19th. Devontae French, 31, was sentenced to 30 years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and felon in possession of ammunition. Not a gun, ammunition. Simeon Hall was sentenced to 30 years for racketeering, conspiracy, and possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance. DeVell Lewis was sentenced to 18 and a half years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy. Cortez Cooper Jr., not senior, junior, was sentenced to 13 and a half years in prison for racketeering, conspiracy, and felon in possession of ammunition. And Brandon Brannigan, 34, was sentenced to 18 years in prison for the same racketeering, conspiracy. And these gentlemen also have the 3 years of supervised release.
Wow. It interests me because these are local people, obviously, and local police were involved. I know Rock Island police were involved. Davenport Police, and then, as I understand it, the federal agencies that were involved included the FBI and the DEA, right?
Yep.
So this was a big sentencing.
This was, yeah, I mean that's a lot of time that they spent with their criminal enterprise.
Right, and it's a lot of people involved too.
Yeah.
So, well, the story I'd like to talk about next is a fairly small one. Sharon, 3 Quad Cities area men were in custody over the weekend after deputies say they were involved in the theft of wire at a Scott County farm. Now, this is according to court records. Lane Brewster, 40, of Thompson, Illinois, Russell Parker, 55, and Jason Preston, 49, both of Clinton, face felony charges of conspiracy to commit a non-forcible felony and first-degree theft, according to court records. Now, a non-forcible felony means that it's a felony charge, but no one was forced at gunpoint, that kind of thing.
They just went and got the stuff, and
yes,
they didn't.
No one
injure anybody.
Correct. No one was imminently in danger here.
Okay.
At 2:42 a.m., July 27, the Scott County Sheriff's Office got a theft report from a farm in Princeton, Iowa. And over the course of the investigation, deputies figured out that 3 men between mid-July and early August conspired to steal wire and spools of wire worth $15,000. And this is a direct quote from the court record. In doing so, 1 or more engaged in conduct constituting the crime by stealing wire and wire spools. All were arrested on warrants. All were in the Scott County Jail. And all are scheduled for preliminary hearings December 27th, you might have guessed that, in Scott County Court, where it is going to be a very busy week. What's interesting to me about this is, why would you steal wire? And that is because metals and copper and other substances can be resold. So this is the second story about wire theft I've written lately. Yeah.
We're definitely going to be following this one, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've got another skip scanner in the Quad Cities.
Oh, good grief.
Now, for those of you keeping track, this is the third one in 2024.
Okay, at least
At
we
least
know about.
that we know about.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. This time, according to the criminal complaint, a woman named Rebecca Pulse is accused of taking items from store shelves at the West Locust and East Kimberly Road Hy-Vees in Davenport, but not scanning all the items. She did
Okay.
not do this once.
So that means, I'm going to back up just
Okay,
a
back
little
up
bit.
just a
That
bit.
means, what exactly did she do? If we looked at a surveillance video, what would we see her doing?
She was taking items off the shelf, like you might when you're shopping.
Right.
Goes to the self-check.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't scan the pot roast.
Okay.
She scans a package of Kool-Aid instead.
Okay, so she paid for some,
Some.
but not all of the groceries.
Exactly.
Okay.
She didn't do this once, Linda.
How
She
many
didn't do it
times?
5 times.
What are police saying?
32 different dates between August and November.
Oh dear, at the same store?
All but 2 of these incidents were at the West Locust.
Oh
Store.
dear.
Oh, it gets better. Some dates have 2 incidents because she was occasionally working with a co-defendant.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yes, for example, they are, in the criminal complaint, they are accused of removing items, in one instance, valued at $245.54, but only scanning $27.84 in barcodes. In another instance, $125.66 in merchandise was removed, but only $12.30 in barcodes were scanned. And shockingly, she does not have a preliminary hearing on December 27th. It's in January.
Okay.
But as a result of this, Hy-Vee is already taking out self-check lanes from some of the stores and are planning to take them out in others.
Oh wow. So this kind of crime is changing the way that stores do business. Correct?
Exactly.
And I've often wondered, because I admit this, I will admit this publicly, I do not enjoy using the self-scan. I would rather entrust a cashier to do that for me, because I always have trouble with vegetables, with produce. But anyway.
My husband does too, and
Well,
you're not alone.
Then Bud and I are certainly partners in non-crime. So this, I wonder how much this happens. And I have wondered, as I've stood in line, how many people are doing that beside me.
Yeah, that's in the comment section on this story. Someone commented, and this is all alleged. We're not saying anybody did a thing, but somebody said I was behind somebody at Walmart doing this, who was doing this.
Right.
So
I get that the self scanners are a good idea for people in a hurry, for customers in a hurry. Boom, 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 and you're out. Right. You bag your own groceries, you're gone. But I also wonder if it's worth it. And I remember when the cashier's presence started to dwindle in the stores, and now you tell me that it might increase.
Hopefully they will be hiring more personnel.
Interesting.
So it's hard to say what a business will do these days, honestly.
Right.
Everybody's trying to do more with less.
Right. But we'll have to keep track of that, not only the crime, but also the trend.
Right. And hopefully we won't have another one, because there's, 8 days left in the month?
Right, but
in the year?
We don't know.
You never know what's going to happen with crime in the Quad Cities. That's what makes it interesting.
And we'll tell you about it next week.
Join us next time for more on the crimes that make the Quad Cities lock their doors at night.